Welcome to SunScream, a spooky evenings production. Tonight's guest is Rachel Harrison. Rachel received her bachelor's in writing and film from Emerson College. After graduating, she worked on TV game shows, publishing, and for a big bank. She lives in Rochester, New York with her husband and their cat Overlord. Rachel is the author of The Return and the upcoming book Cackle, in stores October 5th. Thank you all for joining us again, and thank you to my guest, Rachel Harrison. Welcome, Rachel.
Hello, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I very much enjoyed The Return. I don't know if I can ever stay in a boutique hotel again.
Sorry.
I used to go to this one in Washington, D.C. called the Hotel Rouge in DuPont Circle. And I got a lot of vibes while reading The Return of the Rouge, because when you went into the elevator of the Rouge, it was this stainless steel elevator lit all in red with like distressed black flooring. And I used to always call it the elevator to hell.
Yeah. Was it like a themed hotel, or was that just like the creepiest elevator ever?
It was kind of themed on the ideas of red, right? And
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
yeah, and so they were going for these because like the bathrobes were zebra print bathrobes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And on Sundays they had a hangover breakfast, so it was this cold pizza and Bloody Mary bar.
Okay, I'm kind of getting, so it was kind of like intentionally
Oh yeah,
weird. It wasn't
yeah.
like accidentally, like they weren't like this zebra print goes really well with our red theme. They were like, let's go crazy.
Yeah, they went all out. It was
Okay.
the group is called the Kimpton Hotel Group.
Oh, okay. So it's a little bit, that's a little bit ritzy, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
we
okay.
used to catch these last minute deals.
Okay.
And so we get, the room for like $90 and split it 3 ways.
Yeah, got to be careful with those. Why are they having these
Oh, I
deals?
know.
Who doesn't want to stay in the hotel?
I know, right?
See, this is why I'm not, you won't book your travel with me, because I'll be like, how are we getting murdered on this trip?
So, I mean, because the hotel in the book is its own character.
It's actually based on, so I've never been there. It was
Okay.
kind of like me traveling there through the book, my imagination. The Madonna Inn in California.
Okay.
I saw some pictures that like popped up maybe on like Pinterest or something of like weird hotels, and I was just like, this place is ridiculous. It's not, it has themed room. It's not as intense as the hotel in The Return. It's not like quite as extra, but it's super kitschy and like looks glamorous, but like it's probably not quite as glamorous when you're there in person. You know what I'm talking about?
Where is this?
It's in California. It's in Southern California. I'm forgetting exactly where. I think it's.
I lived there for 7 years, and this is the first time hearing of this.
Might be a little bit north of LA.
Okay.
Can't quite remember. But I saw pictures and I was like, what if like The Shining was set in a hotel like this? And like that kind of got my wheels turning about The Return.
Okay.
And I also have a screenwriting background, so I'm a very visual writer. So I can kind of like to imagine like a really rich setting, just visually when I'm writing. It helps me visualize where they are and the mood and tone and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, it's I mean, because you also get that weird feeling that the hotel is changing at different times, and that it has a life of its own. And it almost as though, full disclosure, we do full spoilers here. So the goal is that the people have read your book before watching this.
Okay.
So spoilers, as always. But you get the sense at times that the hotel is haunted, and then stuff is also going on with Julie, and there's just the sense that there's multiple supernatural things going on all at once.
I think my original intention was to kind of have both going on. And I think my editor was kind of like, maybe pull back from like the hotel is haunted too, because it's a lot going on. And it kind of made sense to me that as things got more and more intense, the kind of environment that they were in changed. Because when they first get there, it's like, it's a little kitschy and creepy, but it wasn't like scary. But as things started to escalate and as it became harder to deny the change in Julie, their circumstances would also, like their surroundings would mirror the kind of dread building internally. Because I feel like if you're outside on a sunny day and at a barbecue and everything's fun, it's different than if you're outside on a sunny day at like a memorial service. Like there's two different, like sometimes your surroundings will just mirror how you're feeling inside, despite how cheery the surroundings are or how, dark you could be in a funeral parlor. And, if nobody's dead and you're just touring it, be like, oh, this is a cool building. But if you're in a funeral parlor and it's haunted and it's nighttime, then it's going to be a different vibe. So I kind of wanted the surroundings to change as Julie is changing.
Sure. And then you also, I mean, because you have the switch up of the rooms, right? Elise is supposed to have Julie's room and Julie is supposed to be in Elise's room. And actually some things may have been resolved if that had actually been the case, because then Julie would have had access to that balcony and could have slept out on that and been so comfortable. It is interesting. I mean, because one of my OCD fears, I guess, is like doors being unlocked, like leaving a door unlocked. Like
you get up in the night, like, are you lying in bed and are like, did I lock the door?
Yeah. Or I'll come back into work and check my office doors. Because actually I went to France and then came back and my office door was unlocked and I was like, there is no way. So actually from then on out, when I was in grad school, I would text myself that I had locked the door.
Yeah, I take it. I have apartment anxiety, which is only going to be worse because I haven't left because of quarantine, I don't leave often. But before I leave for vacation, I take pictures of all, like the sink is not running, the tub is not running, the oven is off, the toaster is unplugged. And then when we leave to lock the door, we take pictures of us because I will go somewhere and I'll be like, oh my God, did I lock the door? I have that kind of anxiety and it could ruin a trip because I'm so worried about it. And I think The Return is a very anxious book. So I think it'll be a surprise to no one that I have anxiety reading The Return.
Sure. Which of the four women do you most relate to?
I think they're all, like, they all have aspects of my personality. I think I can be type A, like May is, where she's like, I want everything to be planned and I'm trying to organize everything. And Molly's a little bit like no bullshit, and I can be that way sometimes with my friends. Julie's very like loyal and loving, and Elise is a mess. And I think, from my early 20s, I was a mess too. And I felt insecure about, everybody else's lives are going much better than mine. And I don't know what I'm doing. And, I don't have as much money and they're all going on trips and I can't keep up and it's going to make me feel isolated and, making bad choices and not quite knowing what to do. I think being in your 20s is a lot of that. And I really wanted to put that into a book because I didn't see a lot of literature out there about like that kind of really intense confusion in the context of friendship.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, these are long lasting friendships. around a decade. And there's a lot of upheaval in that decade, including the loss of a friend and a friend returning. Unintentional pun. And I mean, they even have a funeral for her, as is brought up several times, which in itself is a catalyst for a subplot. And so it is fascinating to see like the fractures in these friendships over time, particularly when the people live in different areas, right? Some in California, some in Manhattan, some in Buffalo, some in the woods with their new creature friends, who I've determined are types of fairies.
That's a new take. I like that.
Well, if you look like fairy lore, it kind of.
Yeah.
What's the general take on what kind of creatures they are? I mean, you obviously had something in mind.
I think like a Wendigo was sort of the jumping off point, but
Sure.
I didn't want to get into like the creatures or the mythology, which might be frustrating for some readers who are like, I want to know what it is. But for me, it would have taken away from the point of the book, which is kind of sometimes our friends change and we don't know why, and we're never going to know what happened or who they are now. And that kind of mystery is just part of the human experience. So I didn't want to get too much into like, this is what she is now, this is the creature, because I thought it would take away from the point I was trying to make, and sort of Elise is not going to get that clarity. So
right.
We shouldn't either.
Sure. I mean, I was thinking of it in terms of like the woods, and sort of the way you describe them too, is almost themselves being almost like bark-like at times in their skin and things. And that's why I was thinking of it more as like a fae.
There's a sculptor, and I have to look up his name because I'll feel bad. The return came out a year ago, so I'm a little bit rusty. Let's see. There's a sculptor who makes these amazing sculptures, and he has this like sculpture of this like skeleton tree creature, and that's what I was kind of really inspired me. But I'm gonna not spend the next 10 minutes scrolling.
We've already talked about our OCD-ness, and now like
now I'm like, I have to tell you. Yeah, when this comes out, I'll post it.
Okay. Well, you're coming out on Sunday. So.
All right. Then I will post a picture, because by then I will have found it. It's in that folder, but it's my like the return folder. So there's like all my editing drafts and all my like promotion stuff. So I'll scroll forever if I'm looking for it now. But there was a sculpture that inspired the kind of creature design. But I kind of like that it's open-ended, because I sort of like in my fiction to have a little bit of room to use my imagination. So I think it's like you being like, I think they're fairy-like is like, oh, awesome. Like, well, that's what they are to you, then that's what they are.
Well, I mean, and also per this book, you don't need to go into the lore, right? Nobody's doing like a paranormal exploration in the book. They're experiencing it, but apart from that, it's also interesting because I just reread The Hunger, and so obviously Wendigo are really fresh in my mind. And it's the same kind of idea, I think, right? It's because you do have that implication of cannibalism, at least.
I definitely wanted to, like, for the purposes of what's happening, I wanted a creature that feeds. Because like when you're in a relationship, any kind of relationship, could be with a family member, a romantic relationship, a friendship, when it's not working, it's so draining. But I didn't want it to be like they're vampires, because that's like, vampires, you have to really like commit to doing something cool with vampires if you want to do vampires.
Well, there's just so much.
So I wanted to have like something that was feeding, because those, like, Julie is draining all of them, especially Elise, where it's just like something is wrong and it's just weighing so heavy. It's just a little bit like, do you watch What We Do in the Shadows?
Oh, absolutely.
Like the energy vampire.
Oh yeah, right.
Without being that's my favorite character, but without being boring. That kind of draining, like you
It's like when he gets the girlfriend, right? It's
yeah.
she's draining him.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and this also works into like a nightmare quality that exists within the piece too, because sometimes we're not even clear if it's a dream or if it's happening too. Because I mean, you have that aspect too, the same in relationships, that you don't necessarily want to believe the bad thing, even if you saw it.
I think all of these characters are very much in denial, and don't want to accept like the reality, Elise being the most delusional out of all of them. But I think when you're not ready to let go of something or someone, you'll do anything to, make yourself believe it's working. Any kind of relationship that you're like, I don't want to let go of this. I'm not ready to let go of this. You'll tell yourself, oh, it's not so bad, or it can be saved, and even way past the point where it can be. This happens more frequently, I think, in romantic relationships, but it happens in friendships. And I don't think, in my experience, we don't really talk about the dissolution of friendships, which is part of my motivation for writing this book. Like, there's a lot of like shame around like having close friendships fall apart. And a lot of like, I don't know, it just doesn't get resolved. Like when you go through a breakup, there's a very like socially acceptable like mourning period, and like, oh my gosh, you're going through a breakup, I'm so sorry, like here's some ice cream, like you'll be okay. And when you get out of a friendship, yeah, there's kind of nothing. It's like, do you talk about it with your other friends? Maybe you have mutual friends, and then that's complicated. There's just a lot of like ickiness around it that I think has gone unexplored or unaddressed. So I definitely wanted to get into that in The Return.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because by the end, some of the cracks in the relationship seem to like forcibly repaired. Just because of like how quickly things really do escalate by the last day, which is also an interesting thing in terms of like the creation of anxiety into itself. Like, we know the timeline the story is on. It's over a long weekend. So obviously by the last day, something will come together. So, as a reader, that's ever present in your mind, because it has to be. Right.
Yeah, I think in horror, I like first person present, because if it's past tense, maybe things work out.
Right.
They're alive at this point. Unless there's the twist where they're like, I'm speaking to you from the grave.
The Sunset Boulevard style.
Yeah. Yes. But then that timeline is also useful in horror, where it's like, something's gonna go wrong by Friday.
There's a play called Exit the King by Ionesco. And it's the queen talking to the king, and she says, you're going to die. And he says, well, of course I'm going to die. She's like, you're going to die by the end of the play.
I love that. Yeah. Also, like, talk about blunt.
I mean, that's like very early on.
Yeah.
First 5 minutes of the show, that line is uttered.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Sometimes I wonder, like, if you could find out, if some oracle came to you and was like, I could tell you when you're gonna die, would you want to know?
That's the curse of the Cyclops.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Yeah. I don't know if probably not. Probably a firm no thanks. Thanks, but no thanks.
Oh yeah, why would you want to know that? Because then you do the horrible Greek thing of trying to avoid it, right? Then
Yeah.
it would come to you in some ironic way.
Or I think I'm like, I always say that if there was a zombie apocalypse, I would just like just lay down and let them take me. Like I wouldn't like The Walking Dead is on like what? How many seasons? Like they've been through just misery and they keep going.
Well, now they're out to sea too.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't know. I don't have the stamina. So I feel like if they were like, you're gonna die at this time, I'd be like, cool, I'm gonna just like live in Dorito dust and be on the couch until that day comes. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm maybe not. Maybe I would feel like I'm gonna live life to the fullest then. And maybe if there was a zombie apocalypse, I'd be like, I don't know, wielding a sword, but I highly doubt it. I don't think I have
You're not
it.
going to be what is it, Tilda Swinton and the dead don't die.
Yeah, no. I think I'd
But you
mostly
get beamed up into your alien spacecraft and you leave too. So there's that.
I don't but like what are the aliens up to?
I don't know. I mean, she's clearly one of them. So
Yeah, I don't
I mean,
know.
she's able to contact them using a radio in the sheriff's department office.
Yeah. Can you imagine if the aliens are just a radio dial away?
I mean, why not? It's like they they live. They're actually here. You just can't
Yeah.
see them.
Lots of
I'd be
UFO
inclined
sightings
to believe
lately.
that. Yeah.
The government was like, aliens exist, and everyone was like, okay, cool.
I think after the past year, everybody's just so numb that the government's like, yeah, now we'll tell you some things. And
Yeah, they just like slipped that in. Like,
yeah,
by the way, there are UFOs. All right.
it was all true. The XFiles was actually based on fact.
Yeah. Hope you're doing good. Here's maybe your stimulus check is coming, maybe not. Bye.
Right.
Like,
Right. It's like the monologue in Network when he's like, I just want my toaster and my television and leave me alone, but they won't.
yeah. Yeah. It's been a rough year.
Yeah,
We're doing okay though. We're
doing okay.
we're doing okay.
We're doing podcast interviews all the time.
We made it.
Do you miss doing bookstores?
Well, so this book came out March 24th of 2020. So it was like right at the beginning.
Okay.
So I did New York Comic Con in the fall of 2019, which was
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah.
That was kind of like my first thing though. So I was like so excited and like so overwhelmed. Like it was just like the most adrenaline ever. And I remember getting home and just collapsing like, wow. So I did Comic-Con and then I did an event at a Barnes and Noble with Simone St. James. And that was in February of 2020. And then
Poof.
that was it. So I did get to see the return in a bookstore for the first time. I guess it would have been maybe June or something
Okay.
when things opened up with masks and stuff. That was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I've been seeing it in every Barnes and Noble I've been in. So.
Oh, yeah. I like to, it's still fun to go and to like go to the horror section and be like, there it is. That never gets old. I don't think that'll ever get old, but it would be nice, hopefully, in the fall to do some in-person events for Cackle. That would be cool. And hopefully by then, like doing these virtual events is a good practice, because I feel like for a big chunk of 2020, I just had no social interaction. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. Like, I forget how to talk to people because I've been writing. So I'm pretty much, and that's very solitary. So I don't really talk to people every day. I was like, I hope I haven't forgotten how. Hopefully by then
I talk at my screen all the time when I'm writing.
Oh, do you really?
Nothing I could say on air usually. It's usually like expletives directed at myself.
I do this thing where if I'm editing, I'll read out loud, but it's not loud. It's like a whisper. And and it'll drive my husband crazy because I'll be like hunched over my computer, just like, he's
That's
like,
fitting for cackle, though,
what are
right?
you doing? Yeah.
You're like,
So
I'm thinking about eating you. I'm looking up a recipe.
to serve man.
There you go. Uh, were you always a horror fan?
So I just didn't know it.
Okay.
Like
You were a closet horror fan.
well, I was always obsessed with it, but I was a fraidy cat. So
Okay.
like one of my early memories is I saw it the
The 90s.
at a garage sale.
Oh,
And
the book. Okay.
yeah, I remember asking my mom about it. And she told me like basically she's like, yeah, it's a clown that like lives in the plumbing, and like she gave me like cliff notes. And she had like I'd seen Jaws very young. I saw Aliens very young. Like she didn't like it wasn't just Barney for me. Like she exposed me to certain things. But I remember like when she told me about it, just being like terrified to like take a shower and like looking at the drains, just like something's gonna come out of there and eat me, and just being so terrified. But I was obsessed with it. And so like I would go to the like if we were at the library, I would go to the horror section and kind of look at the covers and things like that. But I would like dip a toe in and then be terrified.
Okay.
Again, I remember watching the Blair Witch Project, and we had just moved to a new house in the woods and didn't have curtains yet. So I remember being like in my bed, just like woods all around me, freaking out. And then it was really when I got to college, my freshman year roommate is a huge horror fan, huge.
Okay.
And she would basically force us to watch horror movies. Like she'd be like, we're watching The Ring tonight, not an option. And one weekend we watched The Shining, Kubrick version and the miniseries.
Okay.
The TV version with Steven Weber.
Yeah, Steven Weber.
She made me watch The Orphanage, which is now my favorite horror movie, but I had to panic back halfway through and was like, I can't do this. And then I remember the next day waking up and being like, I have to know what happens. And that was kind of the moment where I was like, you love this. Like just lean into the fact that like you love this. And that year I was in a screenwriting club and they did a horror screenplay contest. And I won, and I was like, okay, like maybe this is for me. So yeah, I would consider myself a little bit more speculative, but I'm very passionate about horror now. I've accepted that I love it, even if I'm watching it like a horror movie like this, or even if I have nightmares. And it's a loving relationship.
You're very in the horror genre too. You know, a lot of people are on different edges of it. You know, some people are closer to thriller, some dark fiction. Yours is definitely a firmly situated, I feel like, in the middle of the horror genre. Like at least The Return is.
Yeah, I mean,
I haven't.
People have their own, interpretations of, they could read something and be like, this is the scariest thing I've ever read, and someone else could be like, like everything. I think it's different for each person. I would hope when I wrote The Return, I was hoping it was a scary book. I was hoping it was in the horror genre. And I consider Cackle firmly in the horror genre as well. But the tone is a little bit like there's more humor. The Return is very, very intense in terms of tone. Cackle is a little bit like it skews more towards like a Gremlins, where it's like scary, but also like humorous in the scare. Like that kind of, there's just so much space in horror to have different tones and different levels. I was in a Zoom last week, and I was like compared like the scariness to like a hot wing sauce. Like how spicy is it? And I think that's how like I'm
That's
going.
so subjective though. Like
yeah, it's true. But like some people think that like buffalo sauce is spicy.
Yeah.
But I think in general, it's not spicy. So
Okay.
so I don't know. I would say Cackle is still scary. It's just a little bit funnier in the scariness.
A lot of horror is got that dark humor to it now, right? A lot of postmodern horror. That's kind of where the genre started going in the 90s and has continued. I mean, you already mentioned What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, but I love that because I think there's a lot of room for humor in horror because the horror's ridiculous in nature. And like
It
if something,
depends.
yeah, well, I think if if you're being chased by a creature, it's terrifying, but it's also like there's also like a little bit of humor in that. Like
Sure, but that's
there's
all
no,
supernatural based horror. I mean, if you get
yeah,
to where,
that's
I
true.
mean, there's,
That's true.
like say American Psycho, that's, somebody could go crazy and do those things.
Yeah, that's not quite. The more based in, I guess you're right, the more based in reality it is, the less funny it is. But the
It's funny
supernatural,
because interviewing you is like sandwiched between two books that are human monsters.
which books?
So I talked to Kate Reed Petty yesterday
Okay.
about true stories. Obviously, all
Yeah.
speaking of vampires.
Yeah.
uh, and I should ask you, where did you go to school? Because she and I just discovered yesterday we actually probably had classes together in college.
I went to Emerson.
Okay. And then this afternoon, I'm talking to Daniel Volpe and his book Talia, which is I mean, it could happen. I suppose. I mean, the second half couldn't happen, but the first half could happen. But he does that extreme gore kind of horror, which I mean is not what you're up to. I mean, you do have gory scenes. Obviously, what happens to the bathroom is pretty gory. What happens in the kitchen is pretty gory.
Yeah.
I misread that so horribly the first time I read through it, the kitchen scene, because I read it the first time. I thought it was a person who was dead.
Oh, yeah. No,
It was
that
a
was,
pig.
yeah. That was probably my favorite. Like I'm writing a horror book moment. I was like, it's the head on its river of its own blood. So, like that was a fun scene to write. I think that one and like that whole like last part where they're chased through the hotel and then the part where she's in the ex's house. That
Oh
was also
yeah.
fun to write. That was
So,
I was writing that. I was like, this is different for you. Like, like I don't know. I kind of like switched into this intense mode.
that's one of the creepier moments too, because you absolutely have no idea what's going to happen. You know she's going to get out of there somehow. We don't know if she gets arrested or not. Don't know if she's going to encounter the wife or not.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was leaning into how detached from reality she is and how like I like was like, I'm gonna double down on this character's like messed upness and like feel okay about it. Because I feel like it's hard when you're writing because part of you wants to make your characters like lovable because
yeah.
you love them because you're creating them. But I was like, that's not who she is. She's somebody who just like, if there's something that's like she shouldn't be doing, she's gonna do it even more because she can't help herself. And
Yeah.
that was a good moment for me in writing where I was like, I'm gonna commit to this. I'm gonna commit to her being who she is.
Those moments actually affect me more than like gore. Just the profound, real awkwardness moments. Like sometimes I'll have to like stop something if I know, because you know where it's going and you know it's gonna crescendo in some sort of horrible awkwardness.
Yeah.
And I'll have to just detach for a second.
Yeah, as I think it was fun to write it because as someone with anxiety, I was like, I could never do that. Never. just like the thought of it, I was like, like that's why it was.
And she drags it out. I mean, because again, we have this weird timing because you have the clicks of the garage door and things.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh God.
Yeah.
Have you ever lived in Buffalo?
No, I live in Rochester now. So my
Okay.
sister was in Buffalo. And we had gone like before, like right before I was writing, like where she was. Because at the time I lived in Brooklyn for almost a decade, and I was like, I never want to leave the city. And we were thinking about like eventually leaving, and I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to, but like I really want to wash or dryer, and like that kind of conflict. So I really like Buffalo, and I live in
Okay.
Rochester now. I really
You
like
would,
it.
you wouldn't know it to read the return.
But I think with me, yeah, I know. I felt bad. I was like, I like Buffalo, but
Your agent calling you, the sales in Buffalo are just not
yeah.
good.
But I think it's just her attitude when she goes, which was kind of like, if I move somewhere before I'm ready to leave the city, I'm gonna hate it no matter how great it is, because it's not New York City.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I was kind of working out. And I think that's what she was working out, where she's like, she shouldn't have left, and she has a lot of regret. And like, she made a really bad life decision, and her life sucks there. So she's, you could be in a beautiful, wonderful city, and if you're not happy, it's easier. She does not take responsibility for anything.
Oh no.
So I think that's part of her personality, where it's not like, like Buffalo's a great place. There's plenty to do. Yes, it's cold in the winter, but like there's plenty to do there. And like she could go out and meet people and, get a different job, but she'd rather be miserable and be able to blame it on anything else but herself.
Yeah, because you think when she makes that decision to follow him to Buffalo, you think, well, aren't there thousands of other hideously toxic relationships you could have found in New York?
Yeah. She's just like, she's just, kind of half-assing it. And I don't know, I think I've made a lot of mistakes in my 20s, and I've witnessed a lot of mistakes in my 20s, and it felt real to me. I mean, I have friends who just are in a bad relationship, and they just double down on the bad relationship because it's easier than getting into a new relationship or facing whatever it is that you don't want to face. So
you have an interesting juxtaposition too about with Elise and May, with the idea of parents as well, right? You have this adopted parents versus the estranged parents.
Yeah.
And sort of like environmental nurture nature kind of questions in that regard, I feel like.
Yeah, and I wanted all of them to have like certain things in their past that would bond them. Like, I think if they all came from, these nuclear families where everything was great and they all got along and they had, siblings who they were close with, I don't think they would have connected so much with each other. I think they all had, different upbringings and felt like outsiders for whatever reason. And that's why they're so close, because they could have easily gone their separate ways after college and just been like, screw it. Like for my group of college friends, it was tough because we all moved across the country and we're in different places. And like one of my friends got married and had kids, while I was still single and, going out at night. And like, so it was just this interesting juxtaposition of our lives are so different. It would be easy to let this go. It would be easy for us not to communicate. It'd be easy for us to just never see each other again, because it takes so much effort to be like, well, when, if you have a friend in a different time zone, I had a friend who moved to LA, like, how do we make this work? It'd be so easy to let those relationships go. So it was important to me that these friends were just, it was clear that they had this bond that would make them so committed to staying friends. Because I mean, otherwise, why would they put in all this effort? Why would they care so much? Why would they continue talking to Elise when she's, you know, been terrible? You know, so like, I think I needed them to all have sort of different backgrounds and these, you know, find something in each other that they can't find in anybody else.
Okay, that makes sense. You also, I mean, Julie, even before she transforms, let's say, you know, there seems to be this odd change happening in her as well that's unexpected, even with her marriage, that predates the change. And that's not enumerated on very much. It's just sort of alluded to.
I think that part of it is when after you graduate and if you live in these different places, you could marry somebody and like your friends don't know that person at all. Like that happened to me where, you know, two of my closest friends got married and like I only met their significant others like twice before they got married. So this idea where like your friends can start having a separate life without you in it. And I think that's what Julie did. She started to have a different relationship that, you know, Elise and Molly and May didn't understand and weren't privy to. So I don't know if it was so much of her already transforming and changing, just her moving on with her life and them not really, if you're not with somebody on a day-to-day basis or you don't see them that often, that can happen and it can feel super abrupt to you, but that's only because you're not within the day-to-day.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting thing because I feel like people go one way or the other in that split, right? They're either, they do bifurcate and start a different life, or the outsider has to ingratiate into the circle.
Yeah.
And you do see that, and people make that choice in their late 20s or 30s, I feel like, of what kind of person like that they're going to be.
Yeah.
For better or for worse. I don't know that either is the correct answer. The weirdest, creepiest, knowing, I mean, as the reader, you know, the characters don't, is when they're watching the movie and the stuff drips down. Yeah, that's probably the simplest gross out moment.
My idea was, my editor said something brilliant to me where she was like, what is your villain doing when they're not like on the page? Like, what are they doing in the meantime? And I'd be like, well, Julie would be feeding.
Yeah.
And like she moves through the vents. So she's probably feeding in the vents. So there's probably blood and gore in the vents. And so that was what I was picturing, because there's like a weird smell. And so in my mind, when you don't see Julie, that's where she is.
Up in the vents.
Yes, feeding on maybe various staff members or stealing meat from the kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting because you know, the poor hotel staff, under the watchful eye of the manageress, who has essentially a nervous breakdown.
She has
at the
such a
end.
bad fate. I feel bad. People are always like, well, what about Patsy? I was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't know, she gets saved for last.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is interesting because you have, I mean, the more I think on it too, you have that that Dracula-esque quality to it too, where like it's almost implied that she needs to feed to, like, because she's falling apart so much. And she basically says, you know, you don't know what it took to be here, essentially.
Yeah.
And you get the sense that feeding is what's keeping her from falling more apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
In my mind, she needs to feed to keep her Julie form. And
yeah,
the less she feeds, the more she's deteriorating.
yeah, and you have to wonder, sort of like, geez, what does that final form look like when all is said and done? And it's also interesting too because she makes like this definitive split about her friends. Like she's moved on from Molly and May,
Yeah.
and isn't too interested nor concerned.
Yeah, I think, but friendship dynamics are really, really interesting, like in a group setting, where I
Oh
think,
yeah,
some people are closer than others. And, so you can tell when someone has a favorite, like, and I think she thinks, our friendship is different. Like we know each other on a different level. And like I'm in a group of friends and I have one of them who I'm like, we're very, very alike. Like
yeah.
like we look alike, we're just made up of the same stuff. And I love all my friends like the same, but she and I have this connection where it's like we're so similar that like I understand you on such a level. And I think that's kind of what I wanted it to feel like for Julie and Elise, where it's like, yeah, especially for Julie, I love Molly and May, but like you and me, like we're the same, like we have this connection, this soul connection where it's just a different relationship. I don't know if all friend groups are like that. I have a feeling there's some variety, but I think in any group dynamic, there's going to be people who are closer, who have different connections. And groups dissolve over years and some people will stay in touch and some people will just let the other relationships go.
And Molly has almost like a psychic ability to her too, which is interesting, at least where Elise is concerned.
Yeah, Molly, I think, is that kind of intuitive friend that's like, I know what's up. And like, I'm like not going to put up with this. That's something that kind of is part of my personality that I put into Molly, where like I kind of can sense, if my friends are getting back together with their lousy ex. I can sense, like I can just,
or with another friend's husband.
Yeah. Yep. I can kind of, some people just pick up on these things. Not to like be like, I can pick up on all these things, I'm so intuitive, but like I pay attention and I can like, I'm observant and I can notice the kind of things. And I think Molly's like that too. That's something that has complicated my relationships in the past, where I'm like, what's going on here? And they're like, you want to talk about it or whatever, or I'll, pick because you notice something that maybe the others aren't noticing.
I think that was the most unexpected moment in the book to me. The revelation. I mean, nothing had happened thus far, but like the desire for the Jimmy Carter cheating in one's heart,
Yeah,
kind of moment. I think that was the most unexpected twist to it all to me. It wasn't.
Yeah, I remember writing that.
It confirmed the self-destructiveness.
Yeah, and I think also Elise is looking at everybody else's life like, oh, everybody else's life is so much better than mine, which I think is a something that I experienced a lot in my 20s, especially with social media, where you look around and you're like, all my friends, because if you don't talk to them every day, like you just see what pictures they're posting and like they're only posting pictures of the good stuff. And so I think, Elise looks at Julie and is like, you have this great life. You're like getting up at bed and breakfast in Maine. You married this like good looking guy. Like when I made this terrible decision and look where I am now. So I think it was always more about Elise wanting what Julie had than being like, I want to be in a relationship with Tristan. It was just this kind of like how can I get some of that? How can I get some of her life? Which I think is in the social media age is pretty common, where we look at other people's lives and we're like, I want some of that. I want the way this picture looks. I want to be in that picture. I want that to be my life.
It is also, I mean, there's a weird juxtaposition that emerges too between Elise and Julie's sister, right? In terms of that same insidious creeping into that, how you describe the life, right? Or that idea of a life.
Yeah.
Both for different toxic reasons.
Yeah.
Because also you do have that, again, that familial relationship with one's parents. That plays a part in that as well, in terms of like how Elise got money versus how Julie got money and things like that. Okay.
Well, I mean, I think just more like nuanced, complicated little details that make their dynamic more complex and more fraught.
So I want to ask you some general horror questions now, if I can.
Yeah.
I think we've mined the book pretty thoroughly, unless I've missed something that you.
No, that's a great. I'm glad it's weird because you get so far away from a book after you write it, at least for me. So I'm glad that I remembered what it was about. I was able to chat with you.
It's really funny for me because I always realize how out of order I talk to the guests about their books.
Well, for me, I don't really like, it's so far from like, oh yeah. So I don't remember the order. So I'm just glad I was able to talk about it.
Well, it's even funnier when like the book is not in a chronological order and then I put it in a completely different chronological order about like things I want to talk about or something somebody says and it comes into my mind. Yeah, I do the same with films. So you already listed The Orphanage as a favorite horror film. Is that the style you prefer?
I think so. I mean, I don't know, I like Midsummer, I like Jaws, like those are some of my top.
Yeah, you're all over the place.
Yeah, so I don't know if I have a specific.
I mean, type. Atmospheric seems to be anxiety induced, seems to be a big.
Yeah, I guess atmospheric. But I like, I mean, Jaws, maybe it's just like the best. So I don't know. I think, and I guess Jaws can be atmospheric at times.
I grew up in a beach town, so yeah.
Oh.
We used to joke that it would be the same as Jaws. Like if there was a giant shark, the mayor would be out there going, water's fine. Which, I mean, kind of proved true during COVID originally, like last summer. It was like, come to the beach.
Yeah, it's fine.
You can't catch COVID on a beach.
Yeah. The sun, sunshine, sand. Yeah, I don't know if I have like a specific type. But I do like an atmospheric, and I like it to have a little bit of heart to it. Like I like it to be about something.
Sure.
Like for the story to, like, I don't like gore for the sake of gore, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you have very specific moments of gore that are very, I mean, they're almost like under a microscope, right? It's like a fingernail coming out, or you know, it's that kind of gore. I mean, which is horrifying, right?
Body horror, I think I like to write body horror. Watching body horror can be intense. I might, but I like to write body horror.
That should be a bumper sticker. I like to write body horror.
Body horror.
Or yeah, body horror. I like to write it.
Yeah.
What are you reading right now?
So I actually just finished the audiobook of The Other Black Girl. And that is great. And I don't know what I'm reading next. I think I have a blurb book that I need to read next. But I've been reading a lot lately. I've read The Unfortunate Elements of My Anatomy by Haley Piper, which is great. Highly recommend that. Yeah, I've been reading a lot, but a lot of blurb books as well that I don't know if I can talk about. But my
Probably
next,
not.
yeah.
I'm reading, where is it? It's on my shelf. I'm reading Bacchanal right now.
Ooh, that's on my list. I feel like having a TBR list is just like constant chaos because I feel like it's always just like getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah. I'm probably next. I'll read My Heart is a Chainsaw.
Oh, you got a copy of that?
No, I'm waiting till July like everyone else.
Oh, okay.
I like the look you gave me there. Thank
I
you.
was like, "Ooh, you got
I want a copy.
one?
No, I didn't. I didn't get an ARC of that.
All right.
No, I do occasionally get some, but I didn't get that one. I don't think I'm important enough to get a copy of.
Well, arcs are hard to come by now because I think after COVID, they were like, we're not making as many anymore.
Yeah.
Do the digital stuff.
Yeah. I can't read like that.
Yeah. A lot of people have need the physical. I used to be like that, but for now, like if I am blurbing a book, I can do it on my computer, but I prefer a hard copy.
Now, I do have a couple of ARCs that are that way just because the editor doesn't even have them yet.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, no, I do what I can when I can. What do you, so we kind of touched on this too. I guess you're looking forward to that coming out. Is there anything else that hasn't come out yet that you are looking forward to?
By other people?
Yeah. Well, I know you're looking forward to your book coming
out.
Yeah.
Obviously, My Heart is a Chainsaw. It's hard for me to keep in order the things that are coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a moment where in like 15 minutes, I'm gonna think of all of the books.
I'll check my email and you'll have like a bibliography.
Yeah. But right now my mind is just like there's just like a tumbleweed. So
I got you.
I'll come back to you.
One thing I ask every guest to do is to name a horror blasphemy. So something, a take you have on the genre or something you like that would be controversial to most people.
I don't really feel like strongly about horror rules, and I don't feel important enough to be like horror should be this way or I don't like this. Like I'm just a rookie, man. So I'm gonna say yeah, one day if I'm 10 horror novels in and I'm wearing a monocle, maybe I'll come back and
Monocle.
I'm saying, oh yeah, so now I have my rules. If I live in
like a fake beard too.
Yeah. Yeah. If I live in a mansion with a spider web gate, I'll be happy to come back.
You're rooting to somebody?
Then I will come back and be able to speak confidently about rules. But
it's not even like a rule per se, it's just like, do you like something that most people don't like, or just like something that a lot of people do like?
I don't think so. I'm a middle child. So I'm very much like whatever works for everybody else. Like I don't.
You're a green kangaroo.
Yeah. I'm easily appeased. So and I like to be open-minded in the genre too and just see different things. I'm not a scholar, but I'm the more I read, I try and look for the positive in everything. So I'm not like actively reading something as like, oh, I don't like this or this doesn't work for me. I'm just like excited by it all.
That's fair. not trying to put you on the spot. I'm always just curious what people will say, and I've heard
Yeah,
some
no,
weird ones.
I think it just boils down to my, middle childness where I'm just like, I don't know, whatever anybody else wants, like, fine.
Fair enough. So what's the status of the return? Are we going to see it elsewhere?
It has been optioned for TV.
Okay.
I don't know if anything's gonna come of it. I kind of hope so. And I'm always like, yes, I want it to be developed for my career purposes, but also I'm just like desperate to see what the hotel would look like.
Right.
Like that's more than anything. I'm like, please, I want to
All
see
the
it.
Hollywood Regency furniture in the world all of a sudden sucked up into one place.
Yeah. So hopefully, that'd be really, really cool. But yeah, and then if it does get made, I would want to go to set. Just be like looking at the hotel.
And steal a piece and bring it home.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully. But I've got Cackle too, so we'll see if anything happens.
Yeah, if anybody's listening.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you back on October 4th.
Yes.
Where we cackle it up.
We'll see where my anxiety level's at on the eve of my book launch.
Of the eve of Cackle.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was a ton of fun.
Thank you very much. And I look forward to talking to you again about Cackle.
Me too.
Thank you all for joining us. And as always, stay spooky. Thank you for joining us on SunScream. Tune in next time for Grady Hendrix, author of The Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampire Slaying and The Final Girl Support Group.